Great. So we are recording, and we will stop the recording before the worker panel starts up. So the presentation and the Q&A from the presentation will be recorded, but the worker panel will not be. And please put questions throughout the chat, in the chat, and we'll put resources in the chat as well. The resources will be shared out along with the recording for everyone that registered for the event. Thank you for your patience with our rural internet. If for some reason we lose each other, please just hop back in the room, and we will let you back in. Feel free to engage into the chat, add any questions or comments. You can find me and direct message me, Bo, he, him, Mafka, and tech support. That's me. You can private message me if you're having any issues, and I'll help sort that out for you. Know that folks are calling from incredible places across time and space, and I just want to acknowledge where I'm calling from and recognize that where I'm calling from is Wabanaki unceded territory. These are the tribal communities that have cared for the agricultural lands that we steward for time immemorial, and I want to extend gratitude to specifically the Penobscot tribe, which is where I'm farming in rural Maine. So the Penobscot folks, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, Mi'kmaq, Abenaki, for really caring for this land for time immemorial. And beyond acknowledgement, we want to also call you into a place of action to hopefully consider and make commitments around what does it mean to be farming and working on farms, oftentimes on stolen land and unceded territory. For us in Maine, there's incredible resource networks to get involved in, allyship trainings to engage in through communities like Wabanaki Reach, Bombazine Land Trust, and Eastern Woodlands Remediation. So if you're calling from a place that is not Wabanaki territory, I'll add in a link so you can explore a little bit more whose land you are on to bring that into consideration for your farming journey. Uh-oh, my internet is being slow. I don't think that people can see what I am seeing. Is anything on people's?
Just loading. It says loading on a black screen.
Okay. Okay, here we go. That's good. Recognizing the series is today is part of a series. The next training is on February 7th. This is not with me, it's with my coworker, Anna Mueller, who's doing one on on-farm communication. We also have upcoming ones on employee retention, featuring farm workers and farmer from one farm particular that have been farming together for 10 years. And then we have our last one that's on supporting learners and empowering leaders in your staff on farms. That's my contact information. If you have any questions about the series or having trouble accessing recordings, please email me. We did try and mitigate some of the issues of people getting this link. So if for some reason you're not seeing the link, please check your spam folder for the upcoming Zoom links. And a big shout out to the National Agriculture Apprenticeship Learning Network in Northeast Air that are funding this program. There's incredible resources that this network has specifically around supporting mentorship on your farm if you are employing folks or hosting apprentices. And because this is grant funded, we also have event evaluations to complete, and those help us in strengthening the series moving forward. Okay. My last slide is not sharing, but I do want to share out the information that was on it because I do think it's important for, like I said, I'm a worker at MAFGA, the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. I think it's important as we lead a series on workers management to directly address the truths that we hold at MAFGA in regards to workers' rights and our position as an organization. We want to acknowledge that workers' rights are intrinsically entwined with racial justice. A lot of policies in a lot of states are upheld in a racist history of agriculture workers being exempt from minimum wage and overtime laws. We recognize that centering workers on farms in trainings about managing farms is really what will lead us to a healthy and supportive and productive work environment for everyone that is involved within that food system. And we recognize that exploitative relationships are not just on large industrialized farms. They can really occur on any size farm and any style farm. When we use the word farmer, we do refer to farm workers and the incredible community that keep our farms going. And finally, an acknowledgement that MAFCA as an organization, our support around workers is evolving, and we are still learning and engaging in with supporting farm workers and making changes to our programs so they reflect our equity and justice values in regards to supporting a vibrant farm working community. So if you have any questions about that or feedback on that, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I will drop my contact information and more information to the chat as we go along. On that note, I'm super excited to transition it to Amada from Rocksteady. Rocksteady Farm is a beacon and such a farm that I look up to, doing incredible work in regards to running a rad farm, but also training beginning farmers. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, y'all. Peace, everyone. This is Amada here, sending y'all greetings from Schaghticoke territory in Millerton, New York. I'm feeling really grateful to be part of this series with y'all and share the mic with my coworkers, Maggie and Dee, who will introduce themselves in just a second. We've prepared a really insightful presentation for you all on our inclusive workplace practices that, to tell you the truth, has been like a really beautiful reflective process for all of us that is so timely now in the winter time when we're doing a lot of this digging down into our roots and reflecting, envisioning what we will build out for the next season. So grateful again for the opportunity, Bo, for inviting us, and Anita and Not Our Farms for kicking the series off. We've already learned so much. So again, Amada, I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Education and Programs Manager at Rocksteady. I'm entering my third season with the Rocksteady team this year. And I'll pass it over to my friends.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie, one of the general managers, co-founders, and a worker owner at Rocksteady. So I've been here for 7 years since the jump.
Sweet greetings, everybody. My name is Dee. I use any pronoun or Dee. Yeah, really grateful to be here with all of you today and just kind of sharing and with the panelists as well, as we're kind of embarking on just like learning and just, yeah, being in the process of creating the best type of farmer workspaces that we can. And so it's, yeah, with like, just sort of great honor that I can say that I am a general manager, I am a worker owner, and a co-founder of a project that of Rocksteady that is like incredibly meaningful. So thanks for being here with all of us today.
So like I said, we've prepared a really like fun and presentation for y'all. So just to share what's ahead, we'll do a recap or introduction to who we are as Rocksteady for folks who haven't heard of us before or want to learn a little bit more about us. We'll also do a little grounding on like frameworks that sustain our practices at Rocksteady that are rooted in anti-racism and queer ecology. We'll go into some examples at work and there'll be an opportunity for Q&A. So like Bo said, drop your questions along the session in the chat, and we'll bring them back up during our Q&A. And then we've invited an amazing group of farmers to join us for a farmer panel. For us, this is an opportunity to just talk farmer to farmer, share our experiences and reflections on creating more inclusive workspaces. And there'll be another opportunity for Q&A for our panel, and then we'll close and we'll take it from there. So I'll pass it over to Maggie to introduce us to Rocksteady.
Thank you, Amada. Hi again, everyone. So I'm just gonna do like a very kind of brief overview of who Rocksteady is, so you have a little context to where we're coming from. So our mission is that Rocksteady is a queer-owned and operated cooperative vegetable farm rooted in social justice, food access, and farmer training. Next slide. So for us, that means focusing on very specific areas. About over half of our food goes to lower income folks who wouldn't normally be able to access kind of this like high quality organic standard veg in our area. And also we focus on sustainable ag, non-certified organic. We work on farmer advocacy and specifically queer and trans farmer training. And throughout all this, trying to work on community engagement through work days and strong partnerships in a lot of different ways. We're a for-profit cooperative with 5 owners now, and we are also fiscally sponsored. So we do have a branch of our work that is very focused on mission aligned work, so we can receive donations. And I'll do a little bit more on kind of like how that's broken up in a bit. Located in Millerton, New York, just a couple hours from New York City, which is important to us to be connected to a lot of our queer community in New York. We're on Schaghticoke First Nations land. 2022 is our 7th season. We're on about 8 acres of production, 500 CSA members, both in New York City and the Hudson Valley. Like I said, right now, actually around 60% of all our food go into low-income communities. $50,000 of our whole farm is wholesale, and that's a pretty small percentage. But even our wholesale is kind of like based in relationships with a lot of our community partners who are mission aligned, who are running kind of cool projects with great folks that we want to be partnered with. So not all of our food is in this kind of like CSA model. And last year was the first year we did more public programming, which was super awesome. Amada is leading that, which is great. Next slide. Some shots of our team, Mika, Rika, and Dee. You get a sense of the land. Team shots. Us loving on our veggies. So who is on our team? So right now I'm speaking for I'm one of 10 and soon will be 12 people. And we have a little breakdown of kind of like how many are full-time farmers and how many are admin, kind of bookkeeper world, but majority is in season. We don't really have any winter production. So most of what we're talking about in the culture building and kind of way that we work with people at Rocksteady is during the kind of summer months between April and November. Something that we are trying to work on for the future is more year-round work and kind of spreading the admin and spreading some of our like mission work over the winter to give people more income. but we're still kind of building that right now. Our pay range is 14 to 17. Though we're excited this coming season, we're able to give everyone a $2 raise. So that actually goes up $2, which was super exciting. And then identity wise, we're all united by our queer identity of queer and trans identified people. But we're very mixed race. We're very class mixed group. And so that is something that we hold with a lot of intention, that, you know, even though we all are queer, there's a lot of other identities that are like deeply meaningful to us that we bring to that space as well. So this is like a little like visual of our income stream. So we're gross, we're about $570,000. And this is the kind of the way it looks in like percentages. So you can see we're majority CSA. And then we also, our resold goods are kind of like our add-ons to our CSA. And then we have a smaller chunk, which in 2021 was around $100,000 that we did fundraise for, which helped pay for our programming and some of our donated food that we do. There's Kyle, Field, D. What up, D? Awesome team with our swag. Very goofy. So in the context of Rocksteady, how we live into our social justice values is really important to us. It's something that I think grounds all of our workers. What gravitates a lot of people to work with us is our social justice mission. And for us, that really starts with our co-op model. You know, I think a lot of people might think that Rocksteady is more around like food access, but the more kind of like critical work that we feel like we're doing is actually the more internal work and kind of our training opportunities. We see that's more of the systemic change work we want to be doing. And quite honestly, it does take a ton of energy to do a co-op. So naming that here. And so we are very transparent around all of our co-op identity and bylaws and kind of like onboarding process. We focus on creating a safe workspace, which is an ever evolving thing, as we'll talk about in this workshop. And we also try to tell our story to the world as our queer selves, and do programming for the world also that centers around our identity as queer and trans folks. Go for it, Amada.
Maggie. So just to continue on these points of how we live into our social justice values, we thought it was important to ground also the rest of our presentation and some of the frameworks that support our work and holding each other and building a more inclusive workspace, specifically for BIPOC farmers and queer and trans farmers that are within the team, but are also part of our extended community. So just want to acknowledge, right, the nature of our work in this country rooted in systemic violence towards Black people through enslavement and displacement and genocide of Indigenous peoples has manifested and continues, that legacy continues in the ways that agriculture is practiced in the relationships that the oppressive relationships that show up actively across farms, like Bo said, not only conventional farms. So for us, it's important that we make an active statement and effort to challenge racism, right? By creating shared language, shared analysis, and understanding of how the systemic oppression like manifests itself within interpersonal relationships. And because of what Maggie said, like, yes, we might all be queer. We have that shared identity. We all do come from different backgrounds that require us to then create meaning together and redefine how power shows up in our relationships in our workplace. And I always believe that, you know, good intentions or nice intentions are not enough to solve or undo racism, right? We need like active policy and like structural change. So we have both the relationship happening, right, that are challenging racism, but we also then need policies and systems in place across our organization that are going to hold all of this together. With that, we also incorporate a queer ecology framework to really like analyze and observe our relationships and all the relationships that we are a part of within our ecosystem that is with each other and all the greater than human beings that surround us, to also challenge colonially rooted systems of oppression, like white supremacy and cis heteropatriarchy, and this notion that humans are above nature, because all of us on the farm believe that, you know, the types of relationships and how we hold each other in our relationships is also a reflection of the relationship we have to our exterior world, to the rest of nature. And so it's an ongoing process that we're in of transformation, healing, and the acknowledgement that at any point we can cause harm, right? So this is a reminder for ourselves and for each other that what we are going to share with you today are practices that are evolving for us, are actively being reflected on and transforming as the team changes. And so none of this is prescriptive, and we believe that none of these examples necessarily like will work perfectly for you all, but I hope that these examples that we provide today at least lead to some reflections for you all and your team to figure out systems and practices that work for your workplace. And through these reflections, we're hoping to inspire practices that create a culture of belonging, through appreciation practices, through learning, co-learning and sharing of information, and also with kindness and compassion to ourselves and each other, knowing that we learn, especially as farmers, a lot through mistakes. And that all of this is sustained with active support from our overall ecosystem, but also our ecosystem of friends and community that are holding us accountable and inspiring us to and believe in transformation and our transformation.
Oh, yay, that's me. Can you all hear me okay? Great, thanks. Okay, cool. So hi everyone, again, my name is Dee. I use any pronoun or D, and I'm gonna talk the next couple of slides with y'all regarding our hiring process, team building, and our member manual as well. So yeah, we're going into our 7th season. I think Maggie and I have been tag teaming the hiring process for the last 7 years. I kind of sort of lead it, and Maggie is my support person on it. And yeah, I think that this is a really critical point in, you know, creating the farm, whether you're the owner or the manager, you know, and or whoever you are like in charge of this process. It's like this is the point where like you can like you're creating your work environment, right? The folks that you want to work with, and you know, have, you know, not just for a season And I think that's really one thing. I haven't worked on many farms, but my life is around a lot of farmers, and there is a lot of farmer turnover or farm turnover and turnover on lots of farms. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that in order to frame the success of a farm for long term, or to create like some real stability to a farm, cohesiveness, like good culture is farmer retention, right? So this is the point. If you want to really be thinking long term for a project, is that you're really putting a lot of intention into the hiring process itself. So for us, we are. I think hiring earlier in the season, or like at least posting your jobs earlier in the season, in fall, I mean, for the following year, I think creates some spaciousness for your ability to get like a lot of applicants for you to sort through and interview and understand. And I think, what starts that is the job description, right? And we're providing as much information in the job description for folks who are going to be applying, that they also understand that there is all these other values that we're looking for folks when they're applying, that we are not just necessarily looking for someone who can transplant fast, harvest fast, like do all those, technical farm skills. But as we all know, is that farmers, we actually have to have a whole range of modalities and skills. And sometimes we have to employ multiple skills in a moment, right? And so it's like we're looking for whole people coming with whole skills. So as far as like when I interview folks, it's, I'm interested in like, okay, what do you know about farming, right? That's definitely important, especially actually what's more important sometimes is like, what's your passion about farming, right? Why are you here? Why do you want to do this? Do you want to do this for a long time, right? Again, because in my head, it's like, okay, does this person really want to be here, or do they just want a farm job for one season, right? And so, it's like, I also want to understand why people are farming. And, as far as the interview questions going beyond just the hard skills of farming, it's like, how do you communicate? How do you learn? How do you communicate when you're stressed? Like being like really like honest, or like, I think the more inquisitive that you can be with folks, and also the information that they reply to you in your answers sometimes will trigger something else. It's like a little bit of a juicier nugget where you're like, oh, I want to kind of dig in and understand what they said a little bit more. So also like I do have a set of interview questions, but also remaining nimble in the process of like when things come up and something has been piqued about somebody in an answer they've provided. And I think one thing to be honest about, so what Rocksteady, in full transparency, has experienced in the past is like folks who like idealize, a workspace, whether it's Rocksteady or another place, like, it's like, oh, I want to go work at that farm because, they got biodynamics on lock and I want to learn that. And like, yeah, like, and like just having these ideas of like wanting to work at a particular farm. And for us, that's been challenging for at some points when folks are just like, wow, Rocksteady is everything. Y'all are queer farmers. You're doing it. You're the best. La, la, la. And like, the realities of being in process, especially as a new farm, it's like maybe we're not hitting all of the marks about how to get everything right. Maybe our communication isn't dialed in, our feedback isn't dialed in, right? Everything, some of the farm efficiencies, right? And I think when you're honest about where you're at, and that like, hey, this is in process, this is something that we're work up to, is really important to just be very transparent about. And I'm going to wrap up this slide. Thank you, Maggie, for that. And another thing, as far as team building, which is really important, what are we doing outside of work? How are we going to kick it? How are we going to like chill in the pond on a hot day? Whose birthday is it? Let's do our community events together, but then also let's have outside, just hang time together. Team lunches are really important. I know a lot of farms really are into that. And that's something that we try to do and be intentional about once a week. Thanks, Max. Next slide, please. Actually, one thing that I saw that I didn't say is on the last slide, we do an annual fall farm, a farm retreat where the whole farm team escapes for a weekend to one of our team members. They have a house in Vermont, and it initially was like a work thing where we were like kind of processing work and like trying to do fun stuff, but that was too much. And it's just like, let's go be humans together and kick it for a weekend and like do drunk karaoke, which is what happened. So the member manual and handbook and orientation. So this is really fun, and this is evolved for us as well. I think it's as like you've hired your team, right, for the season, and you got to introduce everybody who's new, to the existing team, as well as providing the returning team with new information that you have to update your member manual. And I think that this is something that I think a lot of farms have, possibly more on the like technical side of like food safety perhaps, and like what you can and can't do on the farm. But I think a lot like our community values, or I'm sorry, our community agreements are included in our member manual. And I think it's really important to create an employee manual that like encompasses both like, again, like the technical, like, we expect promptness, and these are the work hours, like all that sort of housekeeping technical stuff, but also incorporating like information about our method of communication here on the farm, that we uplift and illuminate and all agree to communication that's like empowering, right? And there's more information to come on that later in the presentation. And it provides a way for everybody in the beginning of the season to get grounded. And for me, the orientation can be a lot of fun, because I think, there's a lot to talk about as far as Rocksteady is concerned about because our work culture is so pivotal to our success. I think it's our work culture enables everyone to have the best as possible, like mental health in our workspace, with it already being like farming is hard enough. And so it's just a really sweet way to, as far as our orientation is concerned, to get creative, to ground everybody, to take some time out, like 2 half days in the beginning of the season for everybody when we're all in person, to like do fun, like, what are those? Icebreakers, and like how like just fun things to giggle about and to just kind of kick it. But then also, as we go into understanding some financial literacy about the business, the actual history of Rocksteady, we do like this really dope timeline. It's a visualization, and we mark off every year, and we just have all these different points of like history that are important to Rocksteady, that are both actual Rocksteady history, but then like some of us on the team, like personal information of like, this event happened in my life during this time in Rocksteady, to again understand that us as farmers, us as farm owners too, like are experiencing life positives and negatives outside of the farm that actually can affect possibly how we show up, that we're sad or we're elated at a particular moment in time, and like that we're all just holding all of these different experiences at any given time. So we put a lot of time into our orientation, especially as like I said, we're doing housekeeping stuff around labor laws and other things, but also really taking that time in the beginning of the season to get grounded as a team and like understand what we're trying to do here together for the next 6-7 months together. Is that good? All right.
Thanks, Dee. Just like to continue on that point of, creating this balance of like hitting the mark on like all of the labor law regulations and things that we need to talk about in the workplace, which is great for everyone to be informed about, and also going beyond that to really question and think about like, who are you building safety and inclusivity for, given the fact that most laws in this country are rooted and for the protection of white cis men majority. And so part of our building community agreements is like creating a space for us all to be reflective and active participants in defining and identifying ways that we want to keep each other safe, right? And safety comes in many different ways, right? Here we've listed our four main community agreements that, again, we are revisited multiple times throughout the season. Specifically, they're crafted and recrafted specifically in the beginning of the season because there's usually new team members. But it's a living document because as we have new team members or as we have new experiences together, we need to come back to these agreements and refine them so that they're applicable to our reality, right? And we will share a link to our community agreements so that you can just see them in more detail, because each of these bullets has a bigger description that is shared amongst our staff, but it's also shared for our volunteers, anyone who participates in our educational programs. And then anyone who asks for them, we have other farmers who reach out and are in the process of developing community agreements with their team. So we're happy to share them for reflection for others. And then this is also an opportunity to create ritual and tradition together. So this year we kind of like locked in our commitments to each other and these agreements by planting sunflowers together in our solidarity garden. So I invite you all to think about what are the moments in your operational practices with each other that can be turned into ritual or other types of traditions that celebrate one another and really like honor the practice of welcoming each other's perspectives and truths to build something really beautiful and transformative in your workplace.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, like we've developed all of this and the concept of our kind of handbook and our agreements just like through mistakes that we've made. So just wanting to name that, like I can't say it enough really, is that, you know, it's giving honor to all of the people that we've worked with in the past that we've maybe struggled with or learned something, or they've given us like critical feedback and then we've changed something that like is this ongoing work that we have today. But I'm just kind of like want to de-shame that too, and with regards to like all of you who might be in management positions or ownership, is to just like invite feedback and try not to take it personally, try not to like take it on. So just naming that again. Or take some of it personally if it is personal directly and work on that if you can. But at the same time, if you know what I mean, it's for the whole team, not just yourself that you're doing this work. So I think like the way that we keep up all of the like cultural building vibe and like trust building vibe beyond the orientation is by these ongoing check-ins and meetings, which I'll talk a little bit about. So we've developed a practice of a Monday morning ritual together. So both like Dee and I try to make sure as many staff members are as possible, if not 100% of all of the staff are there at that time, which can be a little hard given part-time schedules. But it's important that even if you're part-time, even if you're working more in the office, that you're at these grounding meetings once a week on Monday. And at that point, it's something that we do for like about an hour, and we practice something called like, you know, resonance with each other, which is repeating back what we're hearing. And we also are like kind of attuning to each other during that. So everyone has a chance to check in how they were over the weekend, how they are going into the week. Are there any support requests they need? We might have a specific check-in question that we're sharing as a group. So that's like very important in the beginning of the week. And then we also have daily check-ins every morning. So that's when we're going over the harvest list and learnings from the previous day, kind of like recaps. But even though it's not like this morning, more intentional meeting, oh, I forgot to mention on the morning of the Monday, we also do a song together. That's like our first thing we do together. So speaking of ritual, that's been really important. We kind of rotate who's leading the group song. So even though on the other days of the week, the Tuesday through Friday, we don't necessarily have time for like a big like go around, if there's something going on in the group, or if there was a conflict that happened the other day, and it feels like the team is off, we might take a round of check-ins to see how people are doing. Or if we know that the day before it was really cold and people's bodies were maybe hurting more. Again, are there any requests for support that we could give each other? I think this really just helps attune to each other for the whole day. And then also really goes into this culture of care that I think we talk a lot about, that just infuses a lot of the work that Rec Study does. And I also put in here something around like for the folks who are in more the admin roles, which sometimes is me. I do admin a lot of like in afternoons. And also other folks who are more full-time admin, to share what they're doing too. So that helps with kind of building them into the team, but also with transparency. Because like the more kind of like check-ins you can get around finances or like co-op development, or partner development, like the maybe more field-based team and like the CSA kind of membership folks will feel connected, and it kind of like makes everyone really understand all the complexities of the farm a little better. And so people don't feel like in the dark. And then we also have winter monthly all staff meetings, which has been an important way to keep connected, and also for transparency around some of those other bigger questions and issues we're dealing with in the winter. Yeah. I mentioned this a number of times, the transparency around financials. And I think I do mention that in spaces like this, because it is kind of like that, like in addition to a lot of the relationship building, culture building ritual, you also really have to have kind of like this strong framework and skeleton that holds all of this. Because as we all know, it's really hard to make farming work financially. And I think it's often kind of an excuse I hear from a lot of other folks around why they're not doing kind of the more empowering communication on their farms, is that they don't have the time, or like they're too tight labor wise, or like just financial stress. Like that's so real. So then kind of like own that, and then make it align in your budget and try to work it in just like you would, you know, paying for another tool or like seeds. You know, it's just such a critical piece to what the work that we're doing. So I just kind of highlight it a little more than maybe other folks on this presentation might. But yeah, so we also think it's kind of like a piece to uplift when it comes to our co-op model, so that people feel like they kind of like know a little bit more about what they might want to buy into, in terms of like if they're getting little trainings throughout the season on finances, they have a little bit more of that like brain kind of like workings throughout the whole year, and it might pique their interest in co-op buy-in. Yeah, so that's about it. Next.
Thanks. So wanting to spend some time also sharing about our feedback, right? So how do we know what areas need improvement or transformation or like sustain that energy? And it's all about feedback. And just wanting to, yeah, acknowledge that feedback is an active practice again that needs to be integrated into like all aspects of our relationships and working together. So, it could look like, in how we decide how we want to tackle laying out remay or harvesting for the day, creating spaces for folks to feel safe and welcome to share their perspectives and ideas, is one way. And then there's also systems that can be developed and applied within the organization, that incorporate feedback within the culture, right? So at Rocksteady, we have multiple systems that are welcoming feedback beyond just the interpersonal feedback that is given and every single day on the field actively, right? So one of the key feedback processes that we currently have are what we call one-on-ones, but they're technically not really one-on-ones, because it's usually like Rocksteady employees and management or like owners. So it's usually like, it'll be like me talking to Maggie and Dee. And we have these in the beginning we have them like mid-season, end of season. And these are opportunities to feedback to go in multiple directions. So feedback about me, but also feedback for Maggie and Dee, right? There's also, we're in the process of developing our peer-to-peer feedback process. And with the support of Relational Uprising, that we'll share a little bit more about them soon. This past season, we spent most of our facilitated sessions defining what empowering feedback looks and feels like for us, so that we can then collectively create a feedback process, a peer-to-peer feedback process that like works for us, right? And our relationships and how we communicate with each other. We also have, one of my favorite things is the end of season reviews. So this is like paid time during the workday, where we gather to like look at all the systems, everything from the crop plan of the year to like, how do we want our crew bay layout to look like for the next year? And across like programs, harvest, irrigation flow, greenhouse. And we're all sharing feedback and reflections on ways that we can improve those systems. We also incorporate evaluation surveys. So these are more like electronic online surveys that we share amongst the staff. This is specifically useful for things like programs. So this year we did community work days. We piloted our Pollinate program. And so it was really important for me to get feedback from the farmers to know how it felt to have like potential apprentices working on the farm, so that we can build programs that are sustaining us as farmers, and not further adding to our workload, right? Again, we're trying to create programs and systems that like fit us and where we are at. We will also share any like surveys and feedback forms for the team if there's any like specific issues or like time sensitive like opportunities. So it might be around like housing or like adding a new CSA site. And perhaps we don't have time to have like a meeting and have a go around, but we can have paid time to then answer a survey and then get some feedback through that way. So really trying to hone in on like, what are the multiple ways that we can gather information from each other so that we can make better decisions with everyone's input. And because we are a CSA farm, we have mini surveys. We have like a mid-season and end season survey that goes out to our members to gather information about like, what do people like to eat? Like what's working, what's not working, what can we change? And these surveys also go out to our community partners. Last thing, two things I'll say about feedback too, as a co-op, right? And again, thinking about anti-racism and queer ecologies, like whatever feedback process that you're developing, make it fit your culture and like your workspace and team. And I think this is an amazing opportunity to really like challenge, again, oppressive hierarchies that just say like, we as workers are only being critiqued, but that there's constructive criticism flowing in many different directions, again, with the belief in each other that it's possible to transform and heal and create better systems for each other. And also with a little like understanding that we all come from different like workplace like experiences and traumas, right? So it is possible, right, that you might want to create a feedback process that asks for people to show up vulnerable and with honesty, and that it takes a lot of trust building to get to that point. So that's what I'm saying, like feedback and the relationship building, it's like an active daily practice, so that in those, peer-to-peer or one-on-one opportunities, like people are able to trust that you're able to receive feedback, and that you're doing your work of like challenging the way that white supremacy culture, especially like being defensive, right, shows up in the way that you receive feedback. So yeah, I love feedback.
Okay. Oh, I was unmuted this whole time. Good thing I didn't work or anything. Okay, cool. So support systems. I think this is really, again, this I don't think this can be illuminated enough, right? As I think in farming, it tends, or it historically has been something like it's a bootstrap thing, and farmers, we just go, we do it, and we're isolated, we're on our own farms, and we're just going in and doing it. And I think that's really we really need to dismantle and get rid of that shit, because if we're not really looking to other peer farmers for support, other possible organizations to help us navigate change that we ourselves may not have the skills, capacity, or time to do, but hopefully if you are able to have the financial ability to, when it comes to paying for support, I think it's really important to do so. And not all support has to be paid, right? So the first two support systems that we have, Relational Uprising, is this incredible organization. They're relationaluprising.org. And Maggie spoke about them earlier, but just to recap again, they're an incredible team, Cedar and Lucy End, who support movement type organizations that are basically doing a lot of the work that we as farmers are doing, as like we're looking to like make change in the world. Basically they support change makers, be better people for their organization. So Maggie and I to some degree have been working with them for the entire time that we've been rock steady, and they've just been pivotal to our ability to be better communicators, and ultimately be better humans, because it is impossible to take a practice that you do at work and not like if it's working and it feels right and generative for you, I'm speaking for myself, for me as a person, I'm taking the skills that I feel so valuable and generative in my workplace. I'm incorporating the mycelial network of those tools into my personal relationships with my mom, my partner, my friends. And that's really powerful. The Mediation Center, which is the next one, it's actually the New York State, for New York folks, New York State Ag Farmer or Agriculture Mediation Center. And those folks are incredible, as well as they are a group of farmers that are actually looking to support farmers as they maybe like a lease a leasee is going into a relationship with like a landowner, and like those conversations, rough conversations are likely to take place. And that's just one of those ways that that the Mediation Center actually supported us early in our relationship with the landowners that we are still in relationship with. And it was really powerful and helpful. The third thing that Rocksteady started was called an accountability council. And basically what it felt necessary to do as you know, Maggie and I, as two people in power, like realizing that we have this power, right? We wanted to ask some folks who are peers, maybe not super tight homies with us, or even if they were possibly, but that like you're looking for somebody who's slightly unbiased, and that can really be one or two people that if for some reason your team members feel an injustice, right, they've experienced harm or some type of injustice, right, that there's actually these folks that you know, will support them, that they can actually go to and say, hey homie, this happened at Rocksteady, I'm not feeling right about this. I just want to, like, they can get some sort of guidance from that person. That person isn't necessarily supposed to be a mediator, but you know, thankfully we haven't had a situation where an employee went to a member of the accountability council, which is typically two people, and includes people of color. It's never really played out. But nonetheless, what's really important to say is that the accountability council really is reflective of the members that we have on our team. And I think for Maggie and myself, or speaking for myself, as a manager, that is really, I feel really responsible to be working on myself and working to be a better person and a better manager. You know, it's like, it can be hard, and you can feel weighted. And it's like, if you're not looking to your peers and hitting up people and farmers that maybe just going through the same thing, it's like, this is like part of the unpaid support. Yo, I need some help. This is what I'm going through. Can we schedule some time, and can we kick it, and can we talk? Can I make you dinner? Can we just have a Zoom? Something like that. I think it's really important to be able to get perspective from other peers of yours, so you can possibly see new things that you haven't seen before, or just an opportunity to be like, can you just resonate and hear me out? I just need some resonation. So I think I'll stop there. Maggie, do you want to take the last two or speak to the other supports?
Yeah. I think we're wrapping up here, and then are going to get to a couple of your questions. But I'd say on the supports that I've really leaned on over the years, I mean, is just like, you know, friends, but also I think I've leaned on Dee as a support too. And I kind of bring that up as because there are not that many farms out there, I feel like, that have like management teams necessarily. There's like, I think I often see like farm manager, and there's like one person, and I'm just naming that's a lot to hold for one person. And so like, I think it has been helpful for Dee and I to like bounce ideas off each other, or navigate team conflicts, kind of talking them through, be accountable to each other. Like if we see that one of us is doing something off, or like we have an idea how to kind of improve. It's also been nice because some employees gravitate more towards Dee than they do me, or me instead of Dee. You know, we can kind of like diversify the leadership in this like tier of Rocksteady. But that can also come with its own dynamics, where people are, you know, like think that Dee and I have this, you know, special thing going on that's like untouchable. So I feel like that's something that we're trying to kind of like untangle right now too, which is just making sure that like there are other people in the ownership team that people can go to also, that like it doesn't necessarily have to be the general managers. So I think that's the benefit of having a co-op, where you have like your, you do at least some co-ops. Ours has a hierarchy, and then there are also like, but as an owner, you can be anyone on the team. You don't have to be at a manager level. But the owners actually have like the most kind of like, agency, and can bring D&I feedback and kind of like hold a lot of these dynamics. So I think diversifying leadership is a support system in my realm. And the last one I just put here is like support systems are like policy docs and contracts, like if there's an issue, lean on a contract with an employee and just make sure you're all on the same page. Or if someone wants to adjust their role at the farm, like make sure that those contracts are live and updated throughout the season so that you can like lean on them if there's any misunderstandings, which farms are fast paced. People have so many different learning styles. It is really helpful to just make sure that there's a written thing to kind of look back on. So I also view that as kind of a support that holds everyone kind of on the same page. Yeah, so we just covered so many things in rapid fire. So I apologize with how quickly we've been speaking. But you'll get the slides and you'll get a lot of our docs. But we are gonna just have a few minutes, and Amada, maybe you want to make that call how long the Q&A is. And Bo's gonna help us out as well. But yeah, thanks for listening and hearing us jabber.
So yeah, shout out to y'all for multitasking and answering a lot of the questions in the chat already. But Bo's gonna bring up some questions that have been unanswered. So we'll have about like 5 minutes for this section, but I promise we'll have more time at the end. So keep asking questions, and then you could always reach out if there's anything lingering. So Bo, what do you have for us?
Yeah, thank you all for your questions, and for Dee and Maggie for jumping in there. We also, for folks that have not been watching the chat, please do, it's at the bottom, there's like a little speech bubble. You can click on that in your Zoom screen and we'll pull it up. There's been some questions in there. Some of them have been answered, and also resources, specifically the co-op docs, employee manuals, handbooks, agreements, things like that, and that will all be shared out in a follow-up email. Some questions that I think are particularly juicy are thinking about the dynamics between co-op members, like worker owner co-op members, and seasonal staff and workers on the farm. And some curiosities here around like, is everyone involved in decision making regardless if they're a co-op member or not? What does it mean when folks aren't there during the winter planning time? How do you make sure that they're, feeling a part of that process? And are seasonal staff encouraged to become co-op members?
Can I start that, Max?
Yeah, go for it.
Great question. Okay, so I think it's important to note that, that when, and this is going back to the hiring process, is that when you're hiring somebody for a particular role, like you're just sort of like speaking, like that's what we do. We speak as much as we can to expectations around what the role is, and that this is the role, and then sharing that, that again, like what I shared with y'all, I shared in the interviews too, is like, we're looking for people long-term. So yeah, it's like, we don't have a strictly horizontal decision-making process on our farm. How we have everything set up is based on everybody's roles and responsibilities of those roles. And that's outlined in like contracts, and every employee has one. And so that way it's very clear, and that you understand that. The next thing is a document that I shared in the chat a little bit ago, is what's called the decision-making matrix. And basically that just sort of lines out like who actually on the farm as of right now, right? And that's also a living document. And that's part of that document itself too, is something that the owners have the decision-making quote unquote power to change and amend as necessary. So right now that's the current iteration of it. And it very just clearly outlines, just so all the staff, all of the owners, all of the general managers, whoever it may be, like, understand this is who are making the decisions. And this is part of stuff that is talked about in the orientation as well, like where we go in a little bit deeper about it. And even though it's not a fully flat horizontal like place where we're making decisions, Maggie and I, make a conscious effort every year to get better about how we're bringing into the team about the transparency of what's happening. If we need to increase our wholesale next month because something happened, like we inform the team, like, how is everybody feeling about this? Because this is also going to affect you. And like, maybe there's a middle ground that we can kind of come to a decision on that feels good for everybody. Does that encompass all decisions on the farm? No, not necessarily. But when it feels right, we definitely try to include the team about feedback around representation on our like marketing or website or social media. And then, finally winter, we typically try to take off for team interaction in December and January. And then in February and March, while we're not all working on the farm, we do Zoom meetings where we just sort of update everybody and introduce the new hires for the season. And we just do Zooms. We'll do probably some relational uprising work, although it's on Zoom. We'll do that in the winter just to kind of get the juices flowing. And again, we want to introduce the new hires to the team to the relational uprising practice that we've created. So we do that even before that those folks come to the farm in April. So I hope that's helpful. And I don't know if Maggie, you have anything to add.
I think you hit on most of it. I think it's just, for us, it's been really, really helpful. I put this in the chat before too, but just to like make sure that it's clear when we're asked, like in season or in the winter, when we're gathering information, like or polling the team or trying to make a decision, like when is it when people are really voting and when is it when they're like giving us input or giving like the ownership team input to a decision that they're making. So it's just kind of like, we do a lot of decisions by like all group with thumbs kind of in moments during morning meetings. And then we do some decisions that are, longer, more drawn out stuff with just a few people. Because we understand that it's also like, the majority of what we do is actually farming. So this has been like a balance of like, how much time are we going to take in meetings and how much time are we in the field and doing the work that a lot of people are there to do and are passionate about. So it's like always trying to figure out, okay, what are the critical decisions that we need to bring to the whole group? And that's usually the stuff that's like gonna most impact their daily life. It's like hours, vacation, like anything that's gonna shift kind of like the vibe of like if we need to meet a wholesale goal or raise number of CSA boxes, we just know that that's gonna have a big impact on like their actual work every day. So it's like, let's make sure to try to get people's heads on that.
Thank you for that question. It's a good one because I think, addressed like a lot of different parts of our policies and also just like how we sustain relationships and opportunities to actively be making more decisions that impact the culture that we hold at Rock City. And I know that there are some questions that we haven't gotten to, and we'll continue addressing them in the chat. But we definitely want to transition into our next section, which is the farmer panel. So I know we're going to pause recording for our panel so we can have more intimate conversation. And I just want to